right. Yeah.
We should be
I'm,
live.
I'm not a risk for saying improper things. So remember, I'm a manager. I can't practice saying bad things. So
Cool. And I already see, at least according to the live metrics, quite a few people are already here, even though a couple minutes early. So as you're joining in, say hello in the chat. It's always fun to see like where people are watching from, what are you building, etc. We're gonna wait a couple minutes before we dive into content because again, we're even a few minutes early here, and I actually forgot to send out our schedule blast on Luma, so I'm gonna pull that up real quick as people are joining in. Just a reminder saying that we're live. But again, as you're joining, say hello in the chat.
So this one's exciting. We have all of the pieces now to run like a full eval loop over time, multiple sessions, and see metrics, but I didn't get there.
Yeah. This is fun. Obviously, we'll dive more into this as we go. Ragas 2, I think, has changed a lot from like at least when I had kind of originally heard about it and like poked at it a while ago. Now they've added a lot of different metric tracking for kind of, I think they're trying to be like a general observability tool for kind of every part of the stack, I think now, including agents and stuff, even though based on the name, and I had always heard about it for like RAG evals.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like they've added quite a bit to it. This one said, greetings to Hopeful Wolfpack. I'm not sure where that is, but you can let me know.
we're a wolf pack,
Is that what we are? The Hopeful Wolfpack?
We stay together, yeah.
The positive, hopeful Wolfpack. I'm not sure if that comes from something else. Let me know in the chat, Steven, if that has some other meaning or something like that.
There's probably a Disney movie or something.
I see a lot more people joining in. Again, hello everyone. Say hello in the chat. Also, if you want to join the actual stream here, you can pull up the link. We took a week off. I feel like I'm rusty. We were doing this every Friday. We didn't do it last Friday. You pull up my LinkedIn real quick too. So if you do want to join the actual live stream here, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. But I know a lot of people just like talking in the chat, and that's totally fine. And I will do my best to bring in comments and conversation and stuff like that from the chat to the live stream. So feel free to keep the conversation in there. I know a lot of people like that. It's a little more casual. You're welcome to do that. But if you do want to join in, find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. And if you don't look like a bot or anything like that, I can send you a link to actually join in. Also, so we'll get going into the content here in a minute. Just if you haven't been here before, this is a semi or almost weekly live stream that we've been doing every Friday. Took last Friday off. And the core idea is that there's a topic or often a specific tool kind of around a topic that people want to play around with or talk about for kind of about the hour or whatever on Friday. And hopefully the goal is that you can take a look at this topic or tool throughout the week. And my goal is to be like spend an hour or something like that on it. You don't have to spend a ton of time, and then you can bring whatever you learn or questions about that kind of into the discussion today. So it's kind of a casual-ish stream here where we play around with a tool. Hopefully you've built a demo if you've had time or built a project, and it doesn't have to be polished. So if you want to build a project throughout the week and then like show it off here, you totally can. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You're welcome to show off kind of whatever you want around here. Oh, and we see Jay is here too. Welcome, Jay. And then
hello.
If you want to join the Slack channel and like discuss the topic or share what you're working on through the week, you can do that there. Optional. I didn't even post anything about this topic this week on there. I'm going to try to be better about it. But that's kind of what this event is. So this week is Ragas, which we'll talk about. Originally started as evals for RAG and memory, but as I learned going through the content is that they've evolved quite a bit since that came out. And they actually have like evals and stuff for kind of all parts of your LLM pipeline, including agents and stuff. which you can take a look at. I only messed around really with the RAG part in my project this week, but we can take a look at the other stuff in the docs and code. And then next week, kind of sticking with this kind of observability theme a little bit, is we're going to take a look at Arise Phoenix, which is their open source platform for LLM observability. So if you want to register for that, that's going to be, oops, pasted that Slack link again. If you want to register for that next Friday, you can do this. So there, Phoenix is Arise's open source for LLM observability, so it'll be kind of fun to check it out. And they more have a dashboard for tracking metrics over time, which we'll see Ragas is going to provide some of those metrics. I assume you can actually integrate with Ragas even if you want to use those pre-built metrics and then bring them in, but you get kind of a dashboard thing. So with that, I think we can start taking a look at Ragas probably. But before we dive in, actually, though, people in the chat, let me know, and on the live stream, let me know if there's another tool or topic that you want to do next. So people have liked kind of the idea of having loosely a theme per month. I'm going to say that might not always happen. If a new tool comes out, we want to check it out and it doesn't fit the theme, we can still do that. But this month is kind of turning into a little bit of this observability theme. And last month was like agent memory. If you have another topic for the week after this, what would you want to check out? Oh, someone said ML flow. Oh, Steven. That's a good one. Actually, that was on my list, Steven. ML flow. And then some people have also mentioned stuff around guardrails. So like ML flow guardrails could also be interesting, which I feel like is part of the observability stack. So, but good to know. I did write down ML flow originally. Good to know that's something people are interested in. But if you have ideas, let me know. If you have ideas outside of observability too, let me know, again, either in the chat or in the Slack channel. Share what topics you want next. People have brought up a lot of like fine-tuning topics too, like LoRa or GRPO. We could tackle those if people want to. So it's a trusty AI for guardrails. I haven't looked at trusty AI, but there's one, guardrails.ai is the one I was looking at, but I'm sure there's a ton of them. Jay, John, any other topics off the top of your heads while you're up here?
I like the observability and evaluation direction. That's kind of where I'm starting to put more attention right now. So I don't have any new tools at the moment, but
ML flow, guardrails.
Could be. I'm looking at them right now. Actually, hadn't heard of ML flow.
ML flow has been around for a while. John, any other ones off the top of your head?
I still need another week with Ragas, but I know it's not in the schedule. I feel like I prioritize building versus learning, and it was like, oh man, I can do a lot with this. So either way, I agree with Jay. You know, the observability track is pretty interesting, and maybe more. You know, there's probably more available other than Arise Phoenix. Just kind of understanding the differences there.
There's definitely a ton. And I guess part of the thing too is like, there's a ton of these tools. I don't always want to do ones that are completely the same. Like MLflow is different, so that's a good one to add in. But like Evidently is another open source evaluation tool that's probably similar to, maybe not Phoenix, but like Arise. And I don't know, if you did them back to back, would be like, they're all cool tools to check out. But I feel like it would get boring if we did like the same type of thing over and over. So it's just something I want to be mindful about. And also for these topics, if people want to branch off and use a different tool than the one listed, that's cool too. The idea is like mainly the topic, I think, and then I have a specific tool that we're kind of designated to check out, but you can use a different tool if you wanted. All right, so this week we're doing Ragas, which again, you can find all the topics and previous code and previous links to the recordings all on this GitHub. And Steven was saying MLflow covers so much now. Eval plus observability are definitely core functionality, and for like experiment management too, even outside of like what people might be thinking for just kind of the current LLM evals and observability. So yeah, MLflow would be a cool one. I think that would be a good one to add in. So maybe we'll do that as the third one for June. All right, so Ragas, I'm going to share links to the docs too directly if you want to check this out. Has anyone used this tool before? Actually, I think is a fun question. It's come up a lot. But more people interested so far in the community of that they've wanted to check it out. But I don't know if people have actually used this in production or implemented it anywhere. But let me know if anyone has had experience using this or not. So Ragas is originally, as the name kind of implies, it started as like an eval library for RAG systems, and that's how that's what I knew it as. And then diving a little bit more into it this week, I saw that they have all sorts of stuff now. So like you can evaluate, an AI agent, and they have all these pre-built metrics, which I think when we look at the metrics, how they kind of work, you can see how this could be used across in different areas. But originally, people always bring this up for evaluating RAG. And if you were here last month, we did a lot of RAG type of work. And so people were asking like, oh, let's go look at Ragas. How we implement this into like our existing projects that we built over the weeks. Oops, I can't zoom in good on this. As you said, they have not used it personally, but it is in use internal at Red Hat for some of our evaluations. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I think it's pretty popular. If you go to the GitHub too, I shared the GitHub link, I think, right? Oh, no, did I only share the docs? Not that stars are super indicative of like usage, but it's decently popular. I know like a lot of people have been looking at it. So the idea is that they have these specific metrics or ways to evaluate, again, originally, and what I worked on this week was using it for evaluating RAG systems. So you have RAG, you're probably familiar with the concept. You have like these chunks that you're bringing in as context to your large language model, and then it's going to help answer those questions. And then you want to see, does it like use that data that it pulled in, and it can use that data as like grounding truth is kind of the idea here for RAG. So a lot of the way that the metrics work now in Ragas, and I don't know if it started this way, a lot of them are LLM as a judge type of metrics that it pulls out. So if you look at, I shouldn't have had this up. Where was it? If they have available metrics that you can pull in for RAG, so they have like context precision, context recall, context entities. I won't read every single one. Faithfulness, which faithfulness, this is the one that most people I feel like bring up or that brought up a lot, is like they want to measure faithfulness in their like RAG systems. So how factually consistent is the response with the retrieved context? So basically, can you look at the context that was pulled in and then see if the response actually like is grounded in those as facts? And this is the one, there's a whole bunch of them. This is the one that a lot of people talk about. From my experience of monitoring any LM type of stuff, a pretty good approach, which I think they kind of even mentioned here a little bit in the docs, I believe, is using a little bit of a shotgun approach. If you don't know which metrics are going to be really good for your system at first, you might want to implement something that you look at all these, and then over time, you might decide some of these aren't actually useful and then remove them. But so they have these pre-built metrics, and we can actually take a look at like what the code looks like to pull these in. But I think it also might make sense to kind of see it in action a little bit. So I have a Gradio app that I built. This hosted on Flyte on my DJX Spark. And for my demos here, I used Gemma 26B. So also you might get different results or better results even with like ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. So I'm using the pretty good Gemma model, but not even the most dense one. And this might be small. Let me see if I can zoom in. So this is an example. I ran this again locally with the Gemma model. It says like, who's the most popular rock group in Finland? And then and then it pulls in, there's some pre-built examples that I have here if you want to run. And then this is the response, is arguably one of Finland's most domestically popular rock bands is CMX. And this is pulls in a ground truth entity. Again, this uses the LM in the backend to kind of extract these metrics. And I'll talk about these metrics here in a second. But here's the chunks that got pulled in. So number one is saying this chunk is arguably this band. And this is using the LM mini wiki dataset on Hugging Face. So it's like a good kind of test to pull out for RAG. And if you actually want to look at this project, the code is all in this Ragas demo. Share the link to that. and I list out the data set actually in here. So it's this one, RAG mini Wikipedia. So it's like something with 3,200 rows. So it gives you a good amount of data and chunks to pull in, and it's just kind of a little mini Wikipedia. So this is where the chunking comes from, or where the RAG context comes from. And then we see that we have this context precision, context recall, context entity recall, faithfulness, response relevancy, factual correctness, semantic similarity, noise sensitivity, and then conciseness. And all of these are pre-built metrics that were in Ragas, except for this one I made a custom metric. And you can see the rating here is all ones on these, and then you can see like conciseness is 0. And we can go look at the prompts that build these out. But you can kind of take a guess a little bit here, like conciseness, when it says, this is a pretty short answer. But it does say like arguably, like I think concise would just say CMX, and that would be like a high rating for this. Again, you could adjust this prompt and custom metric to actually make this a little more variable if you wanted to. The context entity recall is high because it actually gets the like band's name that pulls in from the context. Faithfulness, it seems pretty grounded inside of this context. It even says like verbatim almost that arguably this is the band that's pulled in there. Responsive relevancy is very high. And semantic similarity. And I actually have a breakdown in the project here. So if one of the other, this might help illustrate it really good too, is so if you ask it, what did Cleveland, this is from my response with the GenML model. Again, it might vary if you use different ones. But if I asked, what did Cleveland's opponent say in 1884 to counter his innocent image? And the answer here, which I don't know anything about this, but the answer here is that to counter Cleveland's image of purity, his opponents reported they had fathered an illegitimate child. And then this is the ground truth. And you can see, again, these metrics. So faithfulness is very high. Every claim is grounded from the context that was pulled in. Context recall, the chunk holding the answer was retrieved. So it actually pulled in that correct chunk there. Semantic similarity, close and meaning to the reference. Oh, and response relevancy, the answer addresses the question. It's correct. Context precision, only one of the retrieved 4 chunks is about that slander that I asked about. So it's saying basically like only one of the 4 was relevant to pulled in. So you could use this data to maybe adjust, like if you knew that there's better context to pull in, you could adjust your kind of RAG hyperparameters to maybe get better results here. Factual correctness, even though I think the wording there is correct from what it pulled in, it uses this to kind of say the answer adds true but unmatched claims, such as like it kind of put in some other context in there that isn't maybe a fact there. And then context entity recall counts how many of the reference named entities appear in the context. So the references that came in, they didn't have any proper nouns like anybody's specific name or anything like that. So this is 0. But if it did, then it would score this higher. And then noise sensitivity, it flags that a lot of noise came in. So 3 of the 4 chunks were irrelevant noise, but faithfulness is 1. So the answer was still actually good. So you can use this combination of metrics to get an idea of like how your RAG systems are performing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did another one where I had basically, here's a pipeline running inside Flyte, like our open source AI orchestration tool. So you can see I did 2 RAG runs here where I get scores with different chunk sizes, which is a pretty big factor in terms of like what gets returned to your LM or as context. So you can actually see all the breakdown for each of these things. But if I just go with comparing report, you can see that with chunk size 300, these are my metrics. And so let's see, what was faithfulness? Faithfulness is actually pretty high for both of them. But you can see that like response relevancy went up way higher when I had a larger chunk size. So I was potentially pulling in better data there. And so that's kind of like just the projects I had built. And hopefully this kind of illustrates some of the Ragas metrics that are built in. And so I'm going to catch up on chat real quick and see what people are saying. John, I don't know if you have a demo too, if you want to kind of show what you built. And then we can dive deeper into Ragas docs, look at the concepts, discuss anything else people want, and maybe even some of their code, because it's interesting looking at like the prompts that they have. That's the useful thing, is they've already broken out how to like break down these metrics and having prompts for them. And so we could take a look at some of those if people are interested. Oh, you're on mute, John.
Muted.
Let me share here, and I won't be more than 3 to 5 minutes, so give you a chance to catch up.
And I see Steven said, where was the ground truth entered for that evaluation on the rock band? So the ground truth it pulls in. Oops.
Oh,
Sorry, I accidentally removed John instead of removing my screen. There you go. We'll go with the questions after John's demo.
Oh no, fill in your questions.
Oh no.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I built a project extending off of my failures last week. So last week I wanted to compare graph and vector and Cogni, and ended up building that last week so that I could get a better grade from Sage, because he failed me last week. That's a joke.
We were off last week.
No, he failed me 2 weeks ago, so I had to catch up in order to get my meal ticket. Anyways, so last week I invested just to get the graph and vector and Cogni comparison done. So you enter in one question, it gives you the response and compares all three. So this week was using the evaluation on top of that to give it a score. So there's two tabs here. One is basically running a batch evaluation on 20 questions that were created. So if you don't remember, I created a fictional company called Everstrom, and then we had AI build the Everstrom company docs, and then we ingested those, and then had 3 different RAG models. We had vector RAG, graph RAG, and Cogni RAG. So here in this example, we've asked the question, what warranty gear coverage does Summit protect, provide for technical gear, right? And then you see the response, you see the retrieve context for each, and then you see the response for each. And then down below, you see the faithfulness, answer relevancy, context precision, context recall scores. So the challenge here is I haven't had enough time to go and mess around with these scores and figure out, if there's any code problems or anything like that. But ultimately, it's working. So the next step here would be to throw this in a loop, an automated loop where I can have random generated questions based on my company to test which RAG model is better. So that'll be a next goal. But essentially, here's what it is. You throw in a question, you hit evaluate, and then it gives you what the response would be for each. Last week, it's a different Gradio app, but you can actually change models between Gemma 4 and Anthropic and see a comparison between the two models. So, and last week, actually, surprisingly, what I found was Gemma was more precise. I was kind of expecting it to be more research heavy, but it was actually more precise. So here's an example of another question. What's the return? The 26, just like you're using 26B.
Cool.
So, yeah. So anyways, I think in a production model, you probably wouldn't. I'm more using this for a demo just to show you can compare 3 different RAG models, and then you can also score them with Ragas. So that's the goal here. And then in terms of diving in technically to determine the relevancy of the scores and then throwing it through an iterative loop over a random set of questions, that would be the next feasible step to prove who wins. So, but
cool, I like that. You have to add a LLM wiki in there too. You don't have that one.
Exactly. So anyways, Yeah,
No,
that's it.
this is cool. I like that you've got it, that you have like the multiple different database solutions that had been reviewed over the past weeks, and the demos from those onto one page, so you can kind of just compare them together.
Yeah,
And
I
the
ended up
database
moving Cogni to Lance, right?
Mhm.
And then so the Cogni data set, and actually all of this is running on a Google Cloud VM. And then graph is Neo4j, and then vector is Supabase. So it's actually three different, two cloud hosted, one hosted locally in on a Google VM. And then the Ragas code is running on the Google VM as well. And then there's two Gradio apps. There's the app I built last week that does the comparison, and then there's this week's app which does the Ragas evaluation. So
Very cool. Yeah, I really like the idea of combining those things and like comparing them over time. I think someone else had a project a little bit like that, comparing the LM wiki performance with Cogni or something last time too, which is cool. It's a good idea of building on all the other projects that we've built.
So it'd be great to throw some automation on Union on a Union cluster and just let it run for a bit on the generated questions and see how it goes. I like your charts.
Oh
so,
yeah. Yeah. Cool. Very cool. Tackling some of the questions, and everyone else can help answer here too. And I don't know if Jay, did you have a demo that you were going to share?
I haven't been able to use Ragas yet, so I'm kind of, this is my intro.
No worries. Yeah, so if people want to come up and just discuss on the stream too, again, you can message me on LinkedIn if you want. The catching up on a couple of the questions here. Someone said, does Ragas depend on chunking strategy? I think this kind of might answer the question where it does, like Ragas pulls in those different metrics, and you could see how like a chunking strategy can affect these metrics, right? So like, again, purposely did a very small chunk and then bringing in a little bit of bigger chunk, and then it's going to affect the metrics because it's calculating on what gets pulled in to it. And then somebody asked, where was the ground truth entered for that evaluation on the Finland rock band? So what it does is, or my understanding and looking at the code here, is that for Ragas and these different types of metrics, it uses the LLM as a judge to extract a lot of things, including like entities, which is in this case, like it pulls in this data, it's going to look at it, and it generates like a ground truth, what it thinks is the ground truth answer. So again, most of these metrics here are LLM as a judge, which seems like that's the way that we're doing a lot of evals now, but keep in mind that it's another LLM. So it's again,
deterministic.
Who's watching who's watching the other LLM, right? Like who's watching the watchman, but who's evaluating the evaluator. In this case, the data returned here is probably pretty good to extract these entities, but that might not always be the case, right? Depending on the questions that you're asking.
They have to be siblings, right? If they're siblings, then it's probably accurate.
And then someone said they would like to see the prompts used for LLM as judge in these evaluations. Yeah, so you can actually go into, again, I'll share the Ragas GitHub repo. And if you go into like their source code and then go into metrics, then they're going to have a lot of these pre-built metrics here. And by the way, again, you can add in custom metrics too. So if you want to use this, you can write like your own prompt that'll try to extract out features. But let's look at faithfulness, for example. And if we look at their docs again for faithfulness, it says it's a metric, measures how factually consistent a response is with the retrieved context. It ranges from 0 to 1 with higher scores indicating better consistency. A response is considered faithful if all its claims can be supported by the retrieved context. So it's looking at those chunks, it's extracting out different subjects from it. So when you look at the code, what it actually does is like every single entity in there in a fact tied to the entity, it breaks it out, I think, into like a separate sentence, and you will see that in the prompt. But basically it says like, actually, I think in the prompt it probably has an example, so we'll just look at it here. This is the faithfulness metrics. So if you scroll down, we'll start seeing like here is the instruction that goes to given a question and an answer, analyze the complexity of each sentence in the answer, break down each sentence into one or more fully understandable statement, ensure that no pronouns are used in the statement. This is so that it's very clear. So in the example below, it'll say like Einstein is a scientist or whatever. It won't say like he is a scientist, so it makes it more clear to the LLM. And then format the outputs in JSON. And so here's like an example. Who was Albert Einstein and what is he best known for? And then here's a grounded or a returned answer. He was a German-born theoretical physicist, widely acknowledged to be one of the greatest and most influential physicists of all time. He was best known for developing theory of relativity. He's also he has important contributions to the development and theory of quantum mechanics. And then you can see that this gets broken out into those different statements. So it says Albert Einstein was a German-born theoretical physicist. Albert Einstein is recognized, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read every single one out word for word, but all those statements we just said get broken into a sentence here. And then if you look at the, let's see, the pydantic models that gets returned, basically, okay, so I think this is doing the actual, yeah, so that's how it breaks down, like the context that was passed in. And then this is the part where I think it does the actual measuring. Wait, no, sorry, this is a where's the actual scoring part? I feel like I saw it earlier when I was poking around, unless I misread it. Or if it combines this, it might combine this statement prompt with that. So your task is to judge the faithfulness. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think that's like the breaking down of those statements. And then this actually judges the faithfulness and gives it a score. So it breaks it down. And then for each of those statements, it's going to return a verdict of 1 if the statement can be directly inferred from the context, or 0 if the statement cannot be directly inferred from the context. So again, comparing those contexts. So it broke down like that response into these separate sentences, and then it's going to give each one of them a score of either 1 or 0, and then it'll combine those 1s and 0s together to give us that faithfulness, like a total score. I mean, it's grounding again an LLM, but it's grounding its response in the context that was actually returned. So that's you can go look at these prompts for all those different metrics that they have. Catch you up on chat again. Let's see, someone said they'd like to see the prompt. I think we just covered that. Someone said my guess is it won't get a response in some of these questions. My guess is I won't get a response. I'm trying to respond to questions, or I'm not sure if you're talking about the LM responding to questions or us on the stream. Someone said how to run these 2 demos locally rather than hosting on cloud. So actually mine is running all locally. If you go to my code, and John's is in this repo, but in a branch, I didn't merge it in yet. I need to do that. Mine is running locally. I do have a DGX Spark, so I am running the Gemma model locally, but you could swap out that Gemma model for ChatGPT or whatever hosted model you want and run this all locally very easily. The only thing is you need a GPU for the Gemma model that I have. But I'm running Flyte hosted. This is a Flyte dev box, which gives you like this UI and like versioning and like reproducibility stuff built in Docker containers. I'm running it all locally on a DGX Spark right now.
Yeah, I'm using the cloud because I like the challenge of just building that stuff and going through it. So.
Let's see. Seeing if there's any other more questions.
The nice thing is I didn't name my project the same as yours, so when you merge it in, you won't have issues.
Oh, nice.
No coincidence there.
I'm always wondering that sometimes.
I told Claude, don't name it the same as Sage's, and he gave me 3 options.
Yeah, and Stephen Pausty has already answered some questions from people in the chat too, which Stephen is awesome, by the way. You should go find him on LinkedIn or wherever the best place is to connect with him. But someone asked which chunking strategy is best for Ragas, and like Stephen had answered, that's kind of what Ragas helps you find out. So again, looking at like this example that I had where we compared different chunking strategies, like Ragas is a just predetermined metrics basically to help you hopefully like hone in your RAG hyperparameters or LLM hyperparameters for returning better data or better responses based on data. Let's see. Someone said, thanks, Steve. Ragas doesn't have and Steve again says, Ragas doesn't have a best chunking strategy. It lets you answer which chunking strategy is best for you. Just kind of like we said, I think. Some other people said the same thing. So thank you, everyone, talking to the chat. Someone said they have used deep eval, which is similar to Ragas for evals. I've heard that name of that one too. I haven't looked at it. We can pull that up too. If you've used deep eval, I mean, I assume you liked it. And someone said, oh, also bench local is not bad either. Both of them I haven't used. We can pull them up.
I mean, this seems like this is a classic evaluation problem of like this particular context that you're working in, the type of data that you have that you're trying to evaluate performance of that model or agent. It's like test out a few different frameworks and see which one actually works best in your context. I mean, because there was a LinkedIn question up here that was actually about, like, if you're using the same context metric in 2 different frameworks, Ragas or deep eval, like which one should you choose for the org?
Oh, yeah. Also, I got distracted because I feel like there's some really good conversation going on right now. Somebody says they missed the parts earlier, but the bit about CMX being the most popular band in Finland, but not even in the top 10.
Oh my gosh. No, okay, that was a failure.
Well, someone else said this though, which is kind of cool, is you look at the metrics and someone said this is why factual correctness is 0.
Highly speculative.
Well, and that's, I think when you go break down that prompt, but that's what these things are telling you is like, this isn't a fact, because even the stuff that's returned, again, it pulls in this chunk. So it's arguably one of Finland's domestically popular rock band is CMX. But again, that's not a fact. Like that's just that's like it doesn't
it's just your opinion,
numbers.
man.
It doesn't even say numbers or anything here saying like, they sold more than any other band. Then maybe that would be like a fact, but there's no actual like facts.
Like there's no grounding for that answer.
Yeah. So it's like it actually worked here, even though again maybe the response is not what you would want out of this. But then you could adjust your prompts to your LLM for the RAG, like saying, actually you could potentially, I think Ragas is more for tuning it. I don't know if I'd use it in parallel for responses, because I think it'd take a little bit, at least with all these. But you could tune your LLM and say, if you don't have actual facts or something like that, don't say that. And even again, the response also just says arguably in here. It doesn't actually give a fact for it either.
It's already hedging.
Yeah.
Just a quick question on this, like the Ragas metrics. Was this kind of the standard set of ones that it gives you by default, or did you come up with some of these ones?
You can pick. So that there's most of them are standard ones that come by default. You can pick which ones to call. Again, you can add your own metrics too. So they give you like a bit of an API. They have this thing called Aspect Critic, and I just pass in this custom prompt basically, and it says like, is the answer concise and direct without hedging or filler? For what does it say for this one? For conciseness, it said 0 in here. Again, I might want to adjust that prompt, but you could say that it probably broke it down, and it doesn't just say CMX. It gives most of the string is kind of a filler, almost, right? For the response. So you can give in your custom metrics using their like kind of pre-built APIs that like kind of break down the questions like we saw in the other ones, or in the faithfulness one that we were looking at. But these are the ones that I decided to use. And I think these are a lot of the pre-built ones. Again, you can go poke around in their docs and see what else is there. There's these other metrics too. I didn't even look at these. I think NVIDIA contributed these to the project, if my understanding is correct. So
NVIDIA metrics.
You can take a look at those. There's also something I haven't used, and I didn't even dive into this. I didn't know it was a thing again until I was poking around at it. They have, let me see if I go. They have this test data generation feature, which sounds cool. Again, I haven't used this. I'm not familiar with it. But I think it looks at your like context, like the RAG chunks, and then I assume what it does is a little bit of assumption on my part, so don't take this as a word of truth here, but it's like I assume it will look at the RAG context, like see what entities and stuff are in there, and like come up with potential questions to ask to try to pull in those different entities and get good responses for it. So it seems like they have an interesting tool around maybe creating test data sets too. Like if you've built a RAG project, sometimes that's the hard part too, is like, I want to test all this stuff, I don't know what to do. You can use this, which again, I assume uses an LLM behind the scenes. So instead of just throwing it to Claude, this probably has a little bit more of a kind of like a guardrail of how to build that data set for testing. You can pass in your data, and then I think we'll build out kind of a test data set for you, which is cool, or sounds cool. Again, I haven't used it, but I might actually play around with this and see.
Somebody at the bottom here is asking, like, is the main use case for evals for evaluating answers to questions? It seems, just from some tools that I had worked on in the past, it seems like this would be useful for situations where you're also trying to like summarize existing content. So you're feeding you're basically trying to query a concise set of information from a database of documentation, which would be more of that query side of things. But then also a different tool I'd worked on was more around producing a summarized doc from every more detailed one that you passed in. So you were kind of measuring against a ground truth of like an idiomatic template of what that doc should look like, and then comparing the output of that for every single one in this batch of documents to how close it got to that ideal format and the level of detail against the original one. Like, would it be useful in that sort of context where you're trying to convert more detailed information into a different format? And I guess like evaluating how close it is to the source material without completely changing everything as it changes.
I think some of these metrics would be good for that. Again, like faithfulness is the thing that most people bring up for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you just want any type, all it is like, at least the metrics that I used, again, they have like agent ones that I did not poke around at, but I think the whole idea is some of these metrics, and maybe not all of them, are going to be good at like looking at chunks that are pulled in and then looking at whatever the output is. And it doesn't even have to be an LM that really produces the output. If you had anything else, I guess, right? Like it assumes it's going to be an LM for like a RAG application. But if you're doing summary or writing an article or something like that, not all these metrics are good. Again, conciseness, if you're doing like a summary or adding stuff in, is going to be pretty low score. But I think, again, like faithfulness is one that people often bring up wanting, which again,
like maybe it's like a research bot that is going to go and dig up a bunch of source material and then package it into like a write-up or a paper or some sort of reference. But then you want to judge how far did it stray from the source material that it gathered.
Yeah, and you could even do it probably, not in a RAG application, right? Like it's just, here's comparing text to something else. That's all this really does. So you could use it, I think, in a non-RAG if you just know the scraped articles and you want to look at those versus pulling in chunks like you do with a RAG application. I think it might be useful. And And Steven, I think, had some good questions. They want to see how to implement the actual LM as a judge piece. Is it a single judge or a panel of judges? I think right now by default in there, it could be wrong. We dive into the code maybe. I think it's like a single judge for those metrics, and then you define like what model you want to use. So I think it uses LangChain underneath maybe for the but maybe it doesn't use LangChain, I think, but it uses some sort of model input output system that you can bring in different models. So like it just be the OpenAI call, like or OpenAI format potentially. And you can give it a different model. So if you want to use like a small version of GPT or a larger one for specific ones, you should be able to do that. But they don't give you like a specific model. You can use the model. Again, I used the Gemma 26B. And can you get a measure of variability between the judges? I think you'd have to. From what I understand is like you'd probably like you could actually run if they don't have a built-in thing like this. Again, I've only played around with it a little bit this week. I'm not like an expert in all things Ragas, but you could, if they don't have a built-in thing, just like here, I ran different chunk sizes. You could do the same thing with different models and see how they perform. I think even John said in his app,
I used a different model for the judge and the answer generation. So the judge was a cheaper model, just because of token cost and things like that. But it is configurable. So
see a lot of good discussion going on. I'm trying to keep up with chat, which is awesome. Someone said just to double check. Oh, it's the one Jay read off earlier. Just to double check the main use case. Evals evaluate answers to questions. Or again, really, I think just input and output, basically. And a lot of times that's an answer to some sort of question. Without evals, how can we measure how good a response for a prompt given? I mean,
without evals,
I think you need some sort of. I mean, that's what evals do, unless you're just eyeballing it, I guess, right? And there's different evals that aren't LLM as a judge, which, again, I think is really hard for the type of responses that get generated. But there are other metrics that could be useful that maybe aren't built in here that aren't LLM as a judge things. Like there's lightweight metrics inside like the Python package, like NLTK, which has like sentiment score and stuff like that, which maybe isn't super good at measuring. Or you could also look at not any things like sentiment. Like you could just look at word count and things like that. And depending on your application, that type of stuff can actually be really useful to look at as well. Like if you're just seeing, I always want my thing to be concise, and instead of passing conciseness to an LM, like you could be looking at word count and then be like, wow, was it generating really big responses all of a sudden?
Right. So like some of these aren't like an LLM guessing how similar those two were on length. It's like that's a programmatic check.
Yeah,
of the actual token count.
And that might be useful for different types of things. And it's actually, or another thing is like using regex and checking for like phone numbers or PII or anything like that. Like that can be another metric that isn't in here. That isn't maybe really a RAG evaluation metric, but just other metrics for responses that you might want to track over time.
I mentioned it, I don't know, a few sessions ago. There was the metric that I ended up with for a sort of document source conversion to structured information pipeline was just cosine similarity. It's like, all right, take the source documents, which could be chunks from a RAG database, or they could be the source documents or research, and then compare how many similar words end up in that same document versus the transcribed or structured data off of it. And then, you figure out the threshold that makes sense for the level of accuracy you want.
Yeah. And I see
that's programmatic, not an LLM judge.
Kevin said so far they haven't seen many multiple judge use cases. One LLM judge does the job. And then, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that, like, depending on the application too, because if you're doing something that you feel like is way more critical and you want to actually have better review, like Stephen, I think, kind of responded to that too, saying, I don't think I would ever trust a single judge Also really important, never use the same model family as a judge for any models you are evaluating, which makes sense too. So like you want to have, if you're using Claude API as your thing, maybe you want to use ChatGPT or GPT to evaluate, or Gemini or whatever kind of hosted different things. And you can also potentially, I don't know, I haven't seen, like, people talk about this, I haven't seen a ton of in action, so let me know if you have. But I mean, you can like fine tune a model over time potentially to, if you have a ton of data that you feel like is good, to maybe be a better judge. I don't know if people have actually done that. In theory, it could work good. And I know tools like, actually, I think Arise Phoenix like allow you to do that. Like you can collect a whole bunch of data over time, and then you could potentially fine tune your model as a judge. And actually, depending, I kind of take that back actually, because I was thinking of like the larger LLM models. But if you are doing something that, instead of being a general judge with these prompts, but if you're doing something like, again, going back to like sentiment score, that's actually pretty common to have like a fine-tuned BERT model or something like that for your specific data. And Steven said people have done that and think it's actually the best judge. I mean, it makes sense if you have a big data set. Again, like I take back my statement after thinking about it. If you have a good enough data, or like I was mentioning, one of the more common things that I actually see in production with people for some sort of eval, and maybe not evals like this, but is like a fine-tuned BERT model, which is the bidirectional encoder decoder model that kind of almost kicked off the LLM boom, I think, in my opinion, a little bit before like ChatGPT came out. You can fine tune that, and there's newer versions, and it's very lightweight and kind of cheap to run, and does really good job of you can give it unstructured data, and then it can do like classification, for example, on it. That's pretty common to actually see in production when I talk to a lot of companies that aren't just like major big tech companies. I ask like, what model are you actually using in production at like an insurance company or something? And it's often a BERT model deployed somewhere. And it might not be anymore, because they're probably using Grok or whatever, but it used to be like what Twitter used to classify like every single tweet that would get posted too. And I think it's pretty common again in like chats and stuff like that to measure for like bullying or sentiment score, any type of thing that you want to classify. Steven said, here is their doc on how to train a judge model first. I don't see a link. It might not have come through on my side. Was that whose doc is that? I can also look it up, pull it up. Also, since we're getting closer to the edge of the time, again, let me know. Oh, there's Ragas has a doc. What do they call it? Almost judge. YouTube, just if you're not a host, I wonder if YouTube blocks you from posting a link. Oh, Wildline, your LM judge first. I know for some of the alignment pieces too, they also showed not full fine tuning, but giving it examples. So like you can give it the multi-shot kind of examples in the prompt too. Was it this one, Stephen, or was there a different link? I think definitely giving examples is what probably a lot of people do starting out as well, even if you're not fully fine-tuning it. Oh yeah, this is it. Is it actually fine-tuning, or is it aligning with like multi-shot in questions? My guess is it's multi-shot learning. That you would do for sure in different ways. Fine-tuning for BERT and stuff makes total sense for some of the other classification stuff, I think. But I don't know. Yeah, improving the prompt. I think that totally makes sense. That's 100% what I would do. I mean, yeah, using an off-the-shelf like hosted model, you would have to give it some context, or you should be giving it some context. Yeah, when I meant training, I was thinking like fine-tuning side. Again, for BERT models, great. And if you can on a big one, that's also cool. It really depends on your domain and that you're into and like what data you're expecting to come in, I guess, too. If you're training to do a judge. And usually, again, you need a lot of data. You're fine-tuning like a larger foundation model. Yeah, just like any answer in the ML world, is it depends, I guess, right? But definitely, multi-shot learning type of things would be the first thing I'd probably want to do if I was bringing in a model. Which I think when we looked at the code, like in the faithfulness, like it has some of that in here. Like these are examples, I believe, that get passed into the LLM as well, so it understands how to break this down. And since we're getting closer to time, again, what topics that people want next, let me know in the chat or let me know on LinkedIn. And I'll share the link again one more time for the Slack if you want to join there. There's a channel, it's like ML and AI. It's usually where you post on other channels, but that's kind of where I've been talking about the Friday stuff there. Thank you for all your awesome questions and answers too, Stephen, and everyone else.
I got to go find Stephen on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, you should. Well, let me find him and share his link too. hopefully that's okay, Stephen. Definitely recommend following him. We met in person at a conference a while ago, which is cool. But I've seen this stuff around before too.
Yeah, I think I need to catch up on Ragas over the course of this next week and actually implement it in some of the sort of like prototypes that I've been testing out. Because every couple of weeks, I manage to actually catch up on one of these, build something that's related, and then I'm starting to try to combine them together. Like the original context harness sort of tool that I had made that was in Gradio, that I think would plug in nicely to this more. It's like a multi-session monitoring tool that I'm just setting up locally, where you can track different different agent sessions that you've got running, working on different things at the same time. But having Ragas actually evaluate the sort of context agent that's just watching what I was working on at any point in time, and then feeding that into the vector or graph database, like that's something I haven't applied it to yet, but it would be useful to know, to be measuring basically like how consistent is it actually at catching what I was working on and making useful notes about it. Yeah.
That would be interesting. You're talking about the one you showed before, that like at your screen and uses Gemma to describe what's going on.
Yeah, and then just builds up context over time. But the evaluation problem is like, how useful is the context that it's building up as text?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I almost feel like that would be like a custom metric that you could define back into Ragas, or even just be its own standalone thing, I guess, potentially. Like if you didn't need any of the other metrics, I don't know.
Some of these I think would be useful, but there's a little bit of I think I would probably need to come up with a different metric that's not part of the template. Just by looking at a bunch of the examples that it pulled information from, and then figuring out the ones that are actually a useful, breadcrumb of what I was doing at any point in time to come back to later or refer back to later.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
This is, I can show you this real quick. This is like a weird, where are we? Okay. Can you see the screen? Oh yeah, I dropped it in. So this is like, it's still a little wonky right now, but it's basically tracking different sessions that I have going on with different agents. And I'm having it start to support now actually showing sub-agents that each of these ones kicks off as it's working. And so I'm just kind of building this out as a tool where I can show all these different sessions in different states and like call attention when, oh, this one's blocked on something. I need to jump back over to that. Or like this one ran into an error or got stuck in a loop where it's not making any progress. So this is like a control center surface, I guess, that then I would love to also take the context information being built from the other tool and layer it into the same thing. So I'm just kind of building like a local control surface for monitoring all these different threads going on and building up that consistent context of like what's being worked on at any point.
Cool. What does the pulsing green mean? Does it mean anything like it's running or?
Yeah. So the light bars down, these are a bunch of just like testing cards to show different states in the UI. But whenever one of those lights is on, it means that's like some sort of human input is needed. And the color is based on what kind. So like red means something broke. It's the agent stopped. Yellow means it's still working, but it's probably like it's waiting for me to give it permission to run some sort of bash command or something. So like it's going, nothing broke, but it's just waiting on me. And then green, I believe green is like it's done. It finished on something, but it's still like I need to go check. So it's not running. It thinks it finished the task that I gave it. So go check and validate that. But the standard is just if that light bar is on, it means it needs some sort of human attention.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a ton of like, what agent interfaces are going to look like how to interact with a whole bunch at the same time. I think it's interesting.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm trying to push on is just one, like build up, codify the context of what I'm working on at any point in time so that I can package that in a useful format for agents and for myself to refer back to. But then also, if you're going to try to run multiple different things and you're trying to prototype a bunch of stuff really fast, like you can use tmux or something to have like 5 different terminals open at the same time, but it's not very scannable. And it doesn't scale. Like you can't monitor a larger group of different agents doing different things that way. So I'm kind of trying to pressure test that idea and see how far I can get.
Very cool. I see Steven brought up, turns out MLflow supports Ragas, Deep Eval, and Phoenix into their Score API. So this looks cool. I think I like Steven's idea of adding MLflow for the one after Rise Phoenix and kind of ties together, again, the topics this month. One of the Fridays is also on June 19th, which is a holiday in the US for a lot of people. So there'll be 3 this month because we probably won't do one that day. So it'll be the Ragas one, which was today, and then we'll do the Arise Phoenix one next week, and then the 19th we'll take off, and then we'll do, I think it's going to be the MLflow one. That sounds really good to me. So then we'll probably do MLflow for the last week of June, which is awesome. And thank you for the recommendation, Stephen. And we're at the hour. Unfortunately, I have other work to do. So I'm gonna have to end the stream, even though I feel like it'd be fun to play around and look at blog posts more and stuff like that. People check this one out if you want to look at MLflow. Again, I shared the link in the chat again for the Rise Phoenix one. You can also go look at their site and docs. I'll share the GitHub. I know, Steven said lame, other work. Now I know. Just become a full-time streamer. That could be, I don't know if I would like that. It sounds fun. I don't know.
Like sometimes I like to actually focus and get things done.
Yeah. I do like all the awesome people that come here and talk with people. I don't know if it's something I want to do like 8 hours a day, but who knows? Check out Arise Phoenix. That's what we're going to be building next week. If you want to join the Slack channel I had shared in the chat, it's also in the description below, and talk about stuff that you're building. So if you have questions about this or just want to share the things that you're building, you can. And then also you want to come up and present your project next week if you build something. Again, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to be an expert in Arise Phoenix, but if you want to just show things off or share your thoughts like some others did, you're welcome to come on the stream or just keep it in the chat like a lot of people do as well. But check it out. I did try this a while ago, but I think a lot has changed, and I'm excited to dive in and give it a test. So this is going to give you an actual like dashboard, I believe, too. So I think this is what their UI kind of looks like now. So you'll get like observability over time on your agents running is like what Arise or what a Phoenix is specifically for is like agents and LMs. But Arise also, I don't know how much of it is in Phoenix, which is their open source. Arise is also a like platform you can pay for and do general ML observability type of stuff. They're a pretty popular one, so check them out if that's what you're interested in. But we'll be taking a look mostly at their open source next week. So, and somebody said, "Good show, subscribe." Thanks, thanks to Steve for the recommendation. Steve is bringing people here, it sounds like, too. Cool. Thank you, Steven. All right. I'm going to end the live stream. Thank you, Jay. John already dropped off, but thank you, John, for coming up, and Steven for being awesome in the chat, and everyone else who joined in and was also awesome. So, end the stream. I'll talk to, hopefully, some of you all later. Bye.